I'm Dana Denha, and you're watching FYI. Joy and unity are more important than ever in these times of turmoil. Check out this annual festival that is making people smile. Colorfest Michigan splashed Heritage Park in Canton with colors as far as the eye could see.
Today the world is divided for religion, for the colors. Somebody's white, somebody's black, somebody's brown. Whereas when you come here and get colored, you realize that you're still same human being. And that gives the sense of sameness. And that connects people to other peoples. There are strangers who come and throw colors at each other. So there is a power of unity they experience in this. And so once you experience that power of unity, you feel happy. Right now we are all divided, but when you get one, it's happiness.
This colorful kindness festival originated in India.
The mantra is what unites you, the mind and your body, it gets united. The rock bands, they are doing this for years. And so they promote the unity, happiness, blissfulness, and people experience it. And that's where we call it causeless happiness.
So Punga is a traditional folk dance from Punjab. And so it's like kind of modernized now, and we put like a little bit of like different music in it and stuff. And it's lit.
People may have tossed colors around, but at one point, it rained from the sky.
They should come to Colorfest because it's fun. You'll have a really good time, and you'll probably look forward to it next time.
Right now, even if you go at airport, people don't talk to each other. They're all in their technology world, their mobile world. But here you see, there are strangers. They're just throwing color at each other, smiling. It's bringing that old American culture back, just using colors. So colors is just a representation, but it really unites us.
For more on this happiness-inspired Day of Unity, visit colorfestmi.org. Stay tuned, and we'll be back shortly with more news and information. The homeless crisis is real in cities and towns across the nation, and Ann Arbor is no stranger to this epidemic. One local charity is on a mission to help. Pennywise Inc. employed People's Sweet Tooth to raise money for the homeless.
We're running a fundraiser for the local homeless in the Ann Arbor area, and it's National Brownies Day.
People can pick and choose which flavor they like.
And it's not just one day a year. Pennywise wants to provide a new standard of life for the homeless.
There's many people in this town who's homeless, and I think being homeless is a breaking point in someone's life.
We're trying to make a difference in our area and helping people get back on their feet.
They just really need help mentally, and it lifts people's spirits when they have good things in their life to help them and support them.
For more, visit pennywiseinc.org. There are so many plant species available out there, but it benefits the ecosystem when you think about greenery native to our area. Learn more about native planting from the Natural Area Preservation in this month's City Roundup in 60.
Hi, my name is Michael Hahn. I'm a stewardship specialist with the City of Ann Arbor's Natural Area Preservation. Today we're going to talk about using native plants for gardening. Native plants are not only beautiful, but they're also beneficial to wildlife, such as pollinators like bees and butterflies. So when you're thinking about gardening, you want to think about color throughout the whole season. And so thinking about using penstemon in early June, or common milkweed, which would be beneficial to monarchs, or you could use black-eyed Susans later in the summer, or you could switch over and use goldenrods for late August, and even use asters for late fall. Like I mentioned before, native plants, not only are they beautiful, but they're also beneficial to wildlife.
Washtenaw Community College students made history this summer as they studied abroad in the United Kingdom. 9 students, under the guidance of 2 faculty members, had a trip of a lifetime as they assisted in an archaeological dig that unearthed pieces of the ancient Roman past. Joining me is student DJ Holzhueter and Dr. Christopher Barrett, WCC Anthropology instructor. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So why don't you first kind of give me an overview of this trip and why you decided to go to the United Kingdom for a dig?
We came up with this idea about 3 years ago, my colleague Ian Rush and I, and what we wanted to do was to put together something where not only the students got this wide breadth of exposure to both the prehistory and the history of Great Britain, but also got some kind of practical kind of hands-on exposure to working with materials in the past. And so we found Vindolanda and we found this site that would take volunteers, and we kind of organized the trip from there.
What are the benefits for a student to do a study abroad trip like this? You can chime in here, DJ.
The fact that it's, when you take a class like an anthropology class or a history class, just reading about it and seeing pictures on a page, that's one thing entirely. But the fact that we actually got to go and interact with the things that we were reading about, you know, not just sightseeing, even though that was excellent, but it's like, you know, we were actually down working with these things and picking them up and holding them. And it's like that gives you a totally different exposure to it. So, which was really beneficial.
And I think that for a lot of community college students, they don't get the exposure to some of these actual kind of real world experiences early in their college careers. In fact, most of them don't get the opportunity to do these things until maybe their junior or senior year once they've actually transferred out. And we've always thought it was really important that they get that as early as some of their other peers at 4-year institutions. And I think that that's really beneficial for people like DJ who might be going on to a 4-year program or even a graduate program eventually.
Well, this trip actually kind of shaped your future career path, right?
Yes, it did. Absolutely. I wanted to, when I was a little kid, I wanted to be an archaeologist. You know, I saw the mummy a lot when I was little, and for a little while I was kind of on the fence for what I really wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to do something with history, but I didn't know all of what was available, and it's kind of difficult, you know, living in a super urban area to get any sort of hands-on archaeological experience. So when I finally went to WCC, I went in the history program to start with, and my second semester they were talking about the UK trip, and I was like, all right, well, I can see, is this really what I want to do? Do I really want to get my hands dirty and want to be an archaeologist? And I absolutely
And you got your hands very dirty.
Very dirty, up to the elbows kind of dirty.
Are there certain requirements? Because I'm assuming you can only take so many kids on one of these.
We're limited by housing. We're limited by transportation. We don't necessarily have academic requirements for the people who went on this trip. They needed to be able to complete a class in anthropology or history before they applied, and then they needed to go ahead and complete these courses that we taught before we actually went on the trip. But we are kind of limited by space. We are kind of limited by, you know, the time of the year that we can actually do this in. And they take hundreds and hundreds of volunteers at this particular site of Vindolanda every single year. So getting space available for all of us at the same time is, you know, really, I think, one of the biggest limiting factors.
So none of these students have training going into the dig.
Correct.
Is there on-site training? How
it's
are
all
we
on the
doing
job.
this? Yeah.
I mean, you know, the very first couple of days we spent a lot of time just learning how to find things in the soil. They cut these pieces of sections of dirt, they lift them up, they put them into a wheelbarrow, and then you just start to pull them apart, kind of like pulling apart pages of a book. And that's where the artifacts are. And at first, everything seems like it's an artifact, and then you get a little bit better at it, and you start to find, you know, what is really an artifact, what is just a piece of wood. And the preservation here is so good that you're finding pretty much everything that was, you know, dropped off in the past. And after a couple of days, you get better at it. After a couple of days, people start going actually down in the trenches, actually doing the actual digging down in the trenches. And by the time we had finished up our second week, we were doing just pretty much everything that everybody else at the site was doing.
So why don't you tell me about what was actually found?
We found, so the main thing was the tablets, but we did have a couple other artifacts that came up, and by the dozens, which was incredible. So what we were finding, we were digging in this place called the Vicus, which is kind of like a town outside of the fort. And we're finding pieces of bone from animals, so where people would just throw things away when they were done eating, pieces of leather, brass kind of buttons from armor that had just kind of fallen off. I'm trying to think what else. tools once in a great while. We
Yep.
find a handle for something, but mostly the tablets were the main kind of star in the sky for that.
Did
whole
you
thing.
find one of the tablets?
I found 2 of them.
You found 2?
Yes.
Wow.
And I found absolutely none of them, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I found certainly a lot of other things. The area that we're digging is anaerobic, so it is an area or a layer of cultural sediments that are sealed between 2 layers of clay. And because they're not exposed to oxygen, they have pretty much perfect preservation for everything from 2,000 years ago. We find shoes. We found lots and lots of shoes. Pieces of leather, she mentioned, pretty much everything that you can think of from that period. But the tablets really were kind of the star of that. And they had not found this many tablets since 1992 in any one single field period. And they're examples of the oldest handwriting that we have in Great Britain. We have the oldest example of a woman's handwriting in Great Britain that come from these tablets. Some of them don't talk about things that are very
I was going to say, what do they say?
they talk about birthday parties. They talk about needing more beer. They talk about a guy who wants to get leave for something. They're really kind of mundane, but at the same time, they also give you real insight into the actual lives of these people who were, you know, literally on the northern edge of the Roman Empire. They were right there at the edge of the frontier, and they weren't all Romans. They were people from all over the empire who had kind of coalesced here, and not just soldiers, but also families and children also at the site. So it's really kind of an interesting glimpse into what that past was actually like.
And so when you say tablet, is it just a piece of paper, or?
It's not paper, it's actually wood. And
Okay.
it was made of various materials, pine, and some of the stylus tablets were made with pine. The really nice ones, the ones that DJ found and some of the other students found, were what are called confronting tablets, which are very thin pieces of oak. They've actually been folded in on top of each other. And because they've been folded in on top of each other, likely they'll be able to actually get the writing out of them when they pull them apart. So those are the really valuable ones.
And do you know what is going to happen to these tablets? Are they going to be on view somewhere, or?
There is a museum at Vindolanda. I think that they're going to display some of the tablets there. They're still in the process of doing the post-excavation analysis, so they're still in the process of trying to stabilize it and actually try to get the writing from some of the tablets. But they're already starting to find some very interesting things, and I think they're probably going to take those tablets and eventually distribute them to some of the museums in the UK.
Oh, that would be nice. So you've done study abroad a few times now, since you said you've been doing it every year since 2013.
Yeah.
Is this the biggest find?
Well, you know, we did a lot of work down in Peru, and we do bioarchaeological work down there with skeletal and dental remains. So we work with these populations in this little river valley north of Chile. I thought that those were really significant, but this was kind of exciting significant. You know, there's something to be said for, you know, those long hours in the lab working with bone and teeth and taking all these really careful measurements. But there's also something really fantastic about just finding something that's, you know, almost 2,000 years old, and it's just kind of jaw-dropping. And that's kind of gratifying in a completely different way.
Well, we're just about out of time, but if each of you could kind of tell me your highlight from the trip and why.
Trying to think. Do you have one?
I think it was hearing the scream from the other side of the site when one of my students found their first small find. And I mean, you literally could hear it all the way across the site. And that kind of enthusiasm, you see it sometimes in the classroom, but you can't replicate that kind of enthusiasm in the classroom. And I think it was at that point I'm like, wow, that person is really hooked. You know, maybe that's not a good thing. You know, now they're going to have this profession, and you know, well, maybe that is a good thing. But that was really great.
Yeah.
One of my highlights, so obviously finding the tablet was a huge highlight, but now like looking back, it's such a blur because we were just so excited. But my personal highlight was there was a point where I got down in the trench to actually dig up in this soil, which by the way smells horrible. So, because no oxygen's gotten down to it, so it smells like a swamp. But we were digging and I was allowed to use the shovel and actually get my foot down in there. And I started uncovering a fence. And it was like just watching that take shape in front of me and know like I'm the first person in almost 2,000 years to see this thing, this fence. And it was just so exciting. And it's like, yes, I was finding cool stuff, but I'm also kind of seeing this be built in front of me.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
All right. Well, thank you both for filling me in on what sounds like an amazing trip.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
For more on this and other programs, visit a2gov.org/CTN. Thanks for watching and tune in next time to FYI.